G'day legends, we got a lot to cover in this video, so let's get right into it. This video is going to be breaking down the conspiracy theory, the theory that I have of Khabib Nurmagomedov's return to the UFC and a series of events that I'm going to lay out that could be reasoning as to why he is going to come back or how he is going to come back. Let's go all the way back to the end of UFC 229, where it was Khabib versus Conor McGregor. Khabib had just defeated McGregor, and he was on the phone straight away to the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Putin was congratulating him for his win. He had actually met with Putin at that time. He was the poster boy for Russian combat sports and essentially just Russian masculinity. Khabib was beloved by the Putin government. Jump to 2024, quite a lot has changed, and this is why I started the story there. You start off the story with Khabib being loved by the Russian government, and now he has actually fled Russia. A couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, stories came out that Khabib was in quite a bit of tax debt. Tax debt up to $3 million in unpaid taxes to the Russian government. Now, that is quite weird considering how business is done in Russia. It's not the most uncorrupt place in the world. A figure like $3 million is not the biggest figure when the president of the country, Vladimir Putin, is giving you $20 million worth of real estate in Russia. So for the Russians to suddenly be calling up a tax debt of $3 million seems a little bit iffy. But then we move forward down the timeline, down the course of events, and unfortunately, someone who did train at Khabib's gym for a short period of time, but was still in the Dagestani MMA scene, went on an attack on a bunch of churches and synagogues. Now, this obviously looked horrible for Eagle FC, and then the Russian FSB actually raided Eagle FC. So now Khabib's entire team is linked to the Islamic State. Khabib's team is linked to money laundering, unpaid taxes. Things are getting worse and worse for Khabib Nurmagomedov. Move forward down the timeline today, and apparently, according to Russian media, not only is Khabib in a huge amount of tax debt, but now he has also had all of his Russian bank accounts completely seized, and Khabib has chosen to flee Russia and go to the UAE. This is massive. This is a huge turn of events that has gone on recently in Khabib's life. And the question is, how much of his money and how much of his funds were actually wrapped up in Russian bank accounts, and how much is this going to affect his life as well? Because if he is on a watch list in Russia, if the FSB has put him on a watch list and shut down his accounts, then there is a very high likelihood that that information has been shared with the Western governments as well. There are certain lists that if you go on, your businesses and your travel abilities get shut down in Western economies as well. It's very similar to Khamzat Chimaev, right? Khamzat Chimaev has received funds off a warlord dictator, Ramzan Kadyrov. Now, Khamzat Chimaev is clearly on some sort of list, or at least that is the rumor as to why we never see him in the West. And could this happening to Khabib put him on similar lists? So now he is no longer allowed to go to the Russian Federation. He might not be allowed to travel to the West. Things are getting very, very sticky for Khabib. He could be getting very boxed in. Now, what has this got to do with Khabib's maybe return to the UFC? Well, while all this has been happening, the biggest rival of Khabib, Conor McGregor, has gone a little bit radio silent. We all know as MMA fans, Conor McGregor was scheduled to fight Michael Chandler at UFC 303, and that fell out because of a swollen pinky toe. We also know now as MMA fans, keeping up with that news story going on, that Michael Chandler, after nearly 2 years of almost making a documentary-esque push to fight Conor McGregor, he seems to picture Conor McGregor as this mountain that he needs to climb morally and prove to the world that your dreams can be achieved. And he has stuck to that for 2 years. Now, while all this is happening with Khabib, Michael Chandler seems to be feeling the pressure from Dana White or from higher powers that Conor McGregor fight is never going to happen. Coincidence that is happening at the exact same week that Khabib needs money. I'll lay on a few more coincidences for you, or a few more breadcrumbs that we can now start to put together into this theory of Khabib's return to the UFC. You see, Conor McGregor versus Khabib 1, that amazing month that we had leading up to that fight, from the bus dolly incident, to the press conference, to the actual fight itself, to the eagle soaring out of the cage afterwards. That is the highest selling pay-per-view of all time. And Dana White has gone on record, in fact, there are videos of Dana White next to Khabib just saying to him, imagine how much money that you versus Conor 2 would do. So now you have got Conor, who is ready to come back, albeit except for a swollen pinky toe. Right there, ready to go. You have got Michael Chandler, who is meant to be facing Conor McGregor, now starting to realize that that fight might not be happening. And you have also got Khabib, who might have all of his bank accounts seized and might just have some travel money, some throwing around money over in the UAE. I want to add on one more thing to this theory of how this could all come together. The UFC have very recently started to do business with the Saudis. They are paying now for the biggest MMA combat sports event ever put on, which will be UFC 306 down at the Sphere. Either way, UFC at the Sphere is going to be the most expensive event ever put on, and the Saudis are now paying for that. Now, I realize that the UAE and Saudi Arabia are different countries. However, they are ethnically similar and they do push in the same direction. And the king of Saudi Arabia has done amazing things in boxing. He was the one to finally get all the heavyweight belts unified. He is now paying for the most expensive MMA event ever. He is pumping money into the UFC. And very recently, after UFC 303, a reporter asked Dana White, what are the chances of Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones actually happening? And for the first time ever, Dana White didn't say no. He started talking about how great it is to work with the Saudis. What if the reason that Michael Chandler is now starting to get these messages of just hold on a second, don't go chasing Conor McGregor anymore, is because the UAE government and maybe the Saudis are happy to shelter Khabib, but the UAE and the Saudis and this whole BRICS movement that is going on, this sort of anti-Western movement that is going on, is doing it by working with Russia, by being friendly with Russia. And are they saying to Khabib, listen mate, if we're gonna do you a favor by keeping you protected from the Russian government, you need to do us a favor, and we wanna see one more big sporting event. Could there be things happening behind the scenes where they are trying to convince Khabib that if you are going to shelter in our country and use our non-extradition laws, if you want us to scratch your back, you need to scratch our back? And could the Saudis, the UAE, be talking to Dana White about putting on a mega event featuring Francis Ngannou, Jon Jones, Khabib, and Conor McGregor? The biggest MMA event ever seen, and they want to put their name on it as the people that could make it happen. If there was ever a timeline where the biggest event in MMA history could ever be put together, all the cards are right there. All the ingredients are right there. They just need somebody with a lot of money to put it together. And that somebody with a lot of money just paid for the biggest boxing event in history and just paid for the biggest MMA event in history, UFC at the Sphere. And now all the pieces are there to have Khabib versus Conor McGregor 2 on the same card as Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. It's actually a possibility. What are the chances of it actually happening? That is my grand conspiracy theory. Let me know what you think about it down there in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you've already subscribed, help the channel grow by hitting that like button. Until then, I'll see you all in the next video. You guys have a great day.